you might think that a horsewoman is weak, but she's not. She's strong. We don't want no strong horsewomen. We like
Ladies, gentlemen, them, they, and all, it's showtime! Ha-ha! Although, when we do say showtime, we do use that term very loosely, as what we've got in store for you today, well, our presenters have really no idea what they're gonna say because they're all unprepared. So strap yourselves in and brace yourself as the Some Nobodies present PowerPoint Showdown. So start that round of applause as we welcome this week's Keynote Speaker.
Hello, and thank you for joining us for another conference. Now, tonight you're going to be hearing from 4 professionals and discussing the topics, the positive aspects of peer pressure. Now, with me as always, we have Dylan, and he's slightly damp tonight. We also have Michael, who he's going to be funny later if you give him to him. And we also have a special guest speaker, Mr. Dan, also known as Angry Dan from the 3 Geeks. How are you, Mr. Dan?
Pretty good. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it is at least my pleasure, most likely everybody else's. Now, I'll be the keynote speaker. My name is Loki Zach, and I'll be leading this conference. Thank you very much. Now, for those who are joining us for the first time, each speaker will be given 10 minutes to present our topic of the week. And after each presentation, there'll be a short Q&A from the panel. And of course, we invite any members of the audience to ask any questions as well. All questions are always welcome. Please ask the hard ones. Now, after our 4th presentation, the panelists will be voting on which speaker will be awarded a $50,000 scholarship to Some Nobodies University. Thanks to our paid job members. Thank you very much. You know, the 3 of you, and we do appreciate it. And also the nostalgia prize of the week. And that seems to be. Oh, okay.
Is it a bad MCU costume?
No, it's actually a Red Ryder BB gun, which is pretty sweet. We're gonna shoot somebody's ear off with that or whatever. Okay, now let's see.
Yeah.
Okay, now before we get on the presentations, actually, it's nostalgia. What do you mean outdated? Now there's actually a message from our last week's winner. If I could just go ahead and play that real fast.
It is I, yours truly, the one, the only hot dog man from Hot Dog Land. My name is Hot Dog Starks, and I have the privilege and the honor to deliver this very special pep talk to you, Michael Colby. You keep on losing in a game called PowerPoint Showdown. Now, I must admit, I've played this game several times before. And I remember seeing you. Michael, I'm sorry to inform you, you got beat by a glizzy. But that's not the point. The point is, I don't want you to give up. I want you to keep going. Keep working hard. Keep trying. Because one day, Michael, you can finally win.
Yeah, he really put the slaughtering on us. You got beat by Glizzy there, Michael. I'm not sure if you remember that or not.
Well, but I'm also not going to be too upset about losing to someone who has lettuce on a hot dog.
It's relish on a hot dog.
It looked like lettuce.
That's Hot Dog Starks. You really can't fight with that. Anyway, now
the only thing I'm going to relish tonight is victory.
I hate your guts. I hate your guts.
I'm leaving.
PD, I hate your guts.
Viewers are up, baby.
That's true. They just tuned in for that one. Good job. Okay, now listen, we got some ados, but before any of them, let's get on with the first presentation, which is obviously going to be mine. Peer pressure and the science of peer pressure. Now, the thing about peer pressure that a lot of people don't realize that it's just lying, really. It's just lying confidently until people say, oh, actually, what you're saying makes sense. And there's a science behind it. And that's what we're going to get into tonight with my presentation, The Science of Peer Pressure. Now, next slide, please. Let's hop on into this science. Now, first we got to define peer pressure. Now, it's an easy one. Now, for me, I'm a podcaster, so it's pretty easy for me to go up to somebody and say, you should listen to my podcast. It's satisfactory because honestly, out of at least the 17 reviews we have on all 17 of our shows, the average is that they're just satisfactory. They're decent. But the thing is, most people don't know that. They say to me, no, they're actually not that satisfactory. They're pretty bad. And I'm like, well, let's just break this down. There's a science to it, and I'll tell you. And after talking to them for roughly 20 to 25 minutes, they agree with me. Now, I can't tell if I tired them out, if I won them in a mental battle, but either way, it's probably science. So for this slide, you should definitely listen to my podcast because it's satisfactory. Next slide, please. Oh boy. Now, how much value to assign to humanity's collection opinions? That's, you got to let that sink in. I'm going to repeat that for everyone, especially in the back that can't hear this. How much value to assign to humanity's collected opinions? Now, this is a meatball, right? Now, if you had a meatball that was mass of roughly 7.88 billion people when collected into a fine goo. Now, that's the total just amount of human goop, which is fine. Some people call it glean. I don't. I call it goo, and it's a fine goo. How much value do we assign to that? I mean, it's really just kind of blood and tissue and some mucus and some snot, and then probably some more snot because of COVID. But really, there's also gold in there, and there's also magnesium, if that's worth something, because that's in goo, right? Probably of people. I'll let you decide how much to put, to assign that. Next slide, please. Okay, now the actual value of human opinion really is on a sliding scale. Yes, I did say it was science before, but it's kind of a manipulatable science. It's that kind of science where you're like, okay, there's a range here. It's not an exact number. Now, what I did was I put together a slide here, or a scale, which is the Apache Pass. We also have some Rockdale. You have Lexington. You got Old Dime Box. Then you have a Dime Box proper, which is obviously the better dime box. Now, what I did was I took these things and I tried to tell them what they should have been. And they put up a little bit of resistance at first. But when I told them exactly how high they should get, or hot, extra high, very high, definitely kind of high. Now, what we find out is sometimes the spaceman burns. There's also a point where it gets way too high. But that's really up to you to tell people how high they are. Because when they're just wandering around, they're really just welcoming others' opinions. And you got to make sure you get in their face and say, you might be too goddamn high. Let's figure this out. Depends on if you're at the dime box proper. Next slide, please. Now, how is peer pressure utilized? This is probably the question I get asked the most. And they say, Loki, Zach, how is peer pressure utilized? And I was like, very easily. If you can remember the Illuminati, that I should say no to, but with enough leaning and pressure. Now, granted, these have to be peers. And that's the one thing you have to recognize is that you have to, in your mind, think that these people are actually on your level. And if they are on your level, you can easily sway them to do anything they want, such as, you should come to church with me on this Sunday. Most people will initially say, no. Once again, after 45 to 50 minutes of just straight hammering in your point of view without letting them speak, most likely they'll do what you need them to do. And that's, my friends, is that's actually how you utilize peer pressure effectively in my world. Next slide, please. Now, here are 4 reasons you should listen to my podcast. 1, it's an audible 3D, which is something that we found out after doing a little bit of research on other people's podcasts. If you just say it's in 3D, people really can't fight that because they don't understand it. As long as you come out of both ears, it sounds like it's all around them. Number 2, it's friggin' fresh, baby. It's as fresh as a avocado pear. Is that an avocado? That's probably a pear. It's as fresh as a goddamn pear is what it is. Number 3, we got different kinds of shapes. You could see weird humanoid shapes similar to Dylan. You could see weird globular shapes similar to me. You could see a shape that looks like just an old skeleton, which is probably Michael Colby at times. But the thing is, we don't have the same shape. And if people say, your podcast has the same shape, easily, within 45 to 50 minutes, I can explain to them why they're wrong. 4, it's like chess, not just regular 2D chess, 3D chess, audible 3D chess, which is why you should listen to our podcast, because it's pretty satisfactory. Next slide, please. Here are some results of the peer pressure that I've been putting on people to either go to my church to listen to my podcast or do my drugs. What I did was I broke down drug use, church attendance, also podcast listens. And if I'd have read that first, I wouldn't have said it earlier. Also, if you see the blue, that's before peer pressure. The orange, that's after some firm peer pressure. I really gave them an Indian burn worth of peer pressure. Now, what we did was I told them, you could do 2 drugs. And they're like, sure. And I'm like, wait a minute. You could also do 5.5 drugs. And they're like, why would I do 5.5 drugs? And I'm like, let's just talk about this for 45 to 50 minutes. And once that's over, you'll realize I should probably do 5.5 drugs. Now, church attendance, I didn't really put that much pressure on them because I knew I was saving the best for last, which is podcast listens. Now, I was like, hey, you should go to my church. And they're like, 1 church? And I'm like, no, 2 churches. And they're like, okay. I'm like, wait a minute. 2.5 churches. And then once again, 45, 50 minutes later, it's like, fine. 2.5 churches it is. And I was like, okay, that's a good deal right here. Now, when I really gave them the 45 or 50 minutes worth of pressure when it came down to podcast listens, because of how satisfactory they are, those numbers just skyrocketed roughly up to 17. Next slide, please. Now, in conclusion, once again, peer pressure is all just about manipulating your own brain into doing the things that you think it thinks it should want to do. Now, by doing some simple things like relaying your neurons down to your motor neurons or up to your sensory neurons, you can really stimulate things like receptors, effectors, and honestly, and if anything else, you can really peer pressure into hitting that love button on the Facebook. Because if anything, how else do you know if people are really responding to how much pressure you're putting onto things such as drug use, churches, listening to my podcast, or actually just manipulating my own mind into making you think that my podcast is satisfactory, which it is. Now, once again, it's the relaying of neurons because you really got to tell your own brain what you think it thinks it wants to hear. And after 45 or 50 minutes of that, you're going to do a lot of things because, my friend, you're a superhuman, no matter how shitty your costume is or not. And I think that's going to be the summation of my presentation on the pressurization of your peers. Thank you very much. I do appreciate your attention, and I will answer literally every single question anyone has. Oh, okay. Dylan, who's also muted. There he is.
Oh, yes. Thank you for the presentation. There was a very high emphasis on the 45 to 50 minute time frame. Could you elaborate on why that is the amount of time it takes to convince someone to listen to your podcast?
Oh, absolutely. Now, my podcast is roughly 12 hours long. And when you think about it in reference of time, if I say to somebody, hey, you should listen to my podcast, and they say, okay, they're not expecting much. That was a very short conversation. Now, if I really plead to them and I really break it down to them over roughly 45 or 50 minutes, which is in my research, the attention span people have. Once you start pressuring people for over 55 to 60 minutes, they really tune you out. They roll up their car window and they drive away very quickly, no matter what you're holding on to. But roughly around the 45, 50 minute area is when people say, fine, I'll listen to your podcast. And I'm like, there we go. I did my job. Yeah. Thank you for the question. Very good. Michael, insert funny name.
Yeah. If we could just go back to your bar graph slide for just 1 second.
Oh, good.
I was just wondering, you said you wanted to go to 2.5 churches.
Yeah.
It seems to me like you can't read a bar graph.
No, I can read.
Because that looks to me like 3/4 of a church and 1 church.
Exactly. See, I'm sorry. I respectfully am going to interrupt you. Please, respectfully. Now, what you are forgetting is that sometimes there's a give and a take when it comes to peer pressure. If I say, listen, bitch, you got to go to 16 churches, they're like, whoa, no. And they roll their window up and they drive away no matter what I'm holding. Now, if I say to them, hey, 5 churches, and we kind of settle in the 0.75 church area, everybody's happy. Everybody's happy. Now, if I tell you they went to 2.5 churches, what I'm actually doing is it's called pre-pressure. And I'm kind of alluding you to thinking that there's actually 2.5 churches that I'm trying to get you to go to, when in all actuality, it's only 0.75 churches. Pre-pressure, my friend.
Okay. And you actually got a lot done to get people to listen to your podcast.
Thank you.
Is there any way that you can give a presentation on exactly what you did to go from 3/4 of a listen to it looks like about 17 3/4 of a listen?
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any more questions? Oh, Mr. Dan.
What would be the like? Why would you convince people for 45 minutes to listen to your podcast and not just tie them to a chair and play the podcast for them?
Okay, well, number one, that's making you do a lot of work here. You got to find rope. You got to probably find a chair or something. But what's going to happen is they're going to shut down pretty quickly. You got to get them in the right frame of mind where they think, you know what, I'll just do this on my own. I don't need this. When you put people in a chair, and trust me, we've done lots of research on this. And I've put people in chairs for 45, 50 minutes. Things just do not work out the same way. A lot of crying. They can't really hear a lot of my really good reasonings for why my podcast is so satisfactory. They're kind of just screaming a lot, and they're trying to use their cell phone. And I'm like, listen, unless you're looking at my podcast, you really should be putting that cell phone right. Put it down. And it's just, I'm not really getting to why I think they would actually like to listen to my podcast.
Oh, thank you.
But very good question. No more questions. Okay. Tim Day, I'm sorry I missed this. Said, you've convinced me. I'm going to listen to your podcast with the old skeleton while doing 5.5 drugs in church playing 3D chess. Honestly, it took me less than 45 or 50 minutes just to convince this. Think about if I was doing at least 3 of these podcasts or 3 of these presentations, it would take roughly 45 to 50 minutes. I would convince you guys of a lot of things. Now, okay, it seems like my presentation part is over. Now, once again, we do have some ados, but without them, we're going to get on to Mr. Dan. And Mr. Dan's presentation is right here.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to speak to you today on peer pressure and how I made out like a bandit. Now, you see, many times peer pressure is put as a negative thing, but it doesn't have to be. And I will teach you how to use it to your advantage. Next slide, please. Now, peer pressure comes down to 2 simple actions. You lie and you cheat. Now, you may not be predisposed to do either of these things, but trust me, it's a lot easier once you do it the first time. You will love to do it. It is great. Just, look at people in Hollywood or Washington. See, they got where they were by using this method that I will teach you for free, unless you want to pay me. Now, to lie, you want to get a table at Dorsey, but people like it there. You just, you tell them it's a horrible place and it's bad on Yelp or on Facebook or Google Maps, if anybody actually reads that crap. And see, voila, you get the best seat in the house. Or you cheat. You thought that $20 bill that came out of your neighbor's pocket was yours? It's yours. It's always yours. I mean, you just tell them it's yours. What are they going to do? It is actually yours. Next slide. Now, people, they say they don't like peer pressure, but they really do. So, you tell people Nickelback is bad? No, they're good. You just tell them Nickelback is the greatest band ever. And then they don't buy the same CDs as you, if you still buy CDs, which will be another presentation some other time. Now, drugs. They made a big thing, especially when I was growing up in the 80s. It was like, oh, no, don't do drugs. You had the DARE thing. Funny story. The guy that taught our DARE thing was busted for narcotics. Awesome. Anyway, see, people do like drugs. Take that guy's example. He spent all day telling kids he didn't like drugs, went home, did drugs. What the hell? You just have to, tell them these things. Remember that $20 bill? Hey, those aren't my drugs that fell out of my pocket. Those are yours. Come back to me for more later when you're done with that. See, there you go. And NFTs, you like those? You like monkey pictures? They're great. People don't think pictures are worth anything on the internet, but they are. You just get a rich enough person to tell them they are, and they will be. It's great. Next slide. All right. Now, there was a school that had a mascot that I hated. So this next slide is how I peer pressured an entire high school to change their mascot. You know, like they had a lion. And my school growing up was a lion, and their team sucked. And they shouldn't have had that at all. So one, I threw shade on it. You know, you don't want a lion. You're better than that. You want a crab. Crabs are awesome. Crabs are the greatest thing. You start a rumor. That lion, after every game, he's congratulating the other team for beating you. You know, he's going over there. He's showing them your playbook. You can't have that. That guy in that suit, why is he doing it? He's not getting paid. All right, so you go on social media, you make the lion a fake page or 5. He says all kinds of nasty shit. See, lion just talking crap about everything. You can't have that. You know, I mean, whatever. And, you know, if that doesn't work, you blackmail them. You know, like that lion ended up in a trunk for quite a while. And then, you know, voila, there's your crab. It's the best. Next slide, please. You connect with other pressurers. I mean, you go to TikTok. Look at those people. What do? They pressure everyone. They watch my stupid magic trick, or look at my awesome dress on a yacht somewhere. You know, I mean, those guys are great. Remember the NFTs from earlier? You have them sell them. The military. I mean, you know, they're not very subtle about it, but they're very pressury. You know, get like 5 guys in a gun, they'll do whatever you want them to do. Triple extentation. I don't even know that's a word, but you know what? It sounds great, so we're just gonna leave it there. Just show them naked chicks or naked dudes, depending who it is.
All right.
You know, sells everything.
Yeah.
Pluto TV. They need ads. It could be your ads. The USPS. They already only deliver junk mail anymore. Why can't they have your own junk mail? And my neighbor Brian, he doesn't have a job. He just keeps quitting cigarettes until he reads another Fox News article and how cigarettes keep you awesome for some reason. I don't know. Anyway, see, that's Brian. He's a mystery, but you just give him a job and it's fine. So, you know, you get Brian, you put him in the military, get him naked, make ads of him on Pluto TV, mail them all out, give them to TikTok influencers. You see, it all works. Mm-hmm. Next slide, please. So I've broken this down into numbers of how many things you need to do. So for people to understand lies, you tell them 24 times. And that's what you do. You can do it real fast. You can do it over a month or so. It's fine. Just keep telling them stuff. You know, you tell that to 7 different people. So that's a number I would need a calculator for 24 times 7, and I don't really care. So there you go. You just tell a bunch of people this lie. Hopefully you'll get to 24 sometimes. And then you need to feed them calories. This is important in the Royale with cheese. You just keep shoving that down their throats as you're telling them lies to as many people as you can. You just, you take out a room in like the Hyatt and you get a whole bunch of Royales and cheese and you just like shove it down people's throats while you're telling them lies. They'll believe anything. Next slide, please. And who knows better? You do, of course. This is how all of this works. You lie, you cheat. You should pressure your less than friends because they are less. It doesn't mean that they're worthless. It just means that they're worthless. So you just tell them whatever you want to know. Whatever you want them to know, you just tell them, that's my $20 bill. Here's a Royale with cheese, just all the time. You just do that. Next slide, please. In conclusion, you see, this is how children from North Korea learn how to do everything. They just had somebody tell them whatever and feed them Royales with cheese. And look, they're all happy and smiling. Except for that kid right in the middle. He's not very happy, but it's okay. He will be. He just didn't get his Royale with cheese yet. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Now, I do have a question, if that's okay.
Oh, yes, please. Questions are wonderful.
Now, I was curious why you used what Pulp Fiction taught us was the French for a Big Mac or a quarter pounder instead of the Royale with cheese. Could you please elaborate why French is better?
Well, you see, the French in that is better because everything is better when it's spoken by Samuel L. Jackson. You see, and people would latch onto that. See, it's that, the popularity, the celebrity of the Royale with cheese and not the quarter pounder. Yeah. It just sounds much better. It's like Casino Royale was a James Bond movie, did not have Samuel L. Jackson, but it was pretty good. So, you got to go with what's popular.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Not a problem. Yes, Dylan.
Thank you for the presentation.
You're quite welcome.
If we could bring up the producers could bring up the slide about contacting other influencers very quick.
Yes.
There was something I wanted to ask. Now, X-Tentation, I believe is how it's pronounced. XXX-Tentation. I am also unfamiliar with it, but I was wondering if you might speak on the similarities. You spoke about crabs earlier. So I was wondering if you could say a similarity between X-Tentations and crustaceans.
Well, see, X-Tentations have more floppy bits, whereas crabs are kind of harder, and they get around a little harder. However, they are not mutually exclusive.
Okay.
So
Excellent. Thank you.
Sometimes you get crabs when you're X-Tentations.
Okay.
Michael.
Yeah. I mean, I was wondering also about the triple X tent action.
Yes.
I was on triplextentaction.com, and it's just people fucking while they're camping. Now, does that have anything to do with the rapper? Or, I mean, was he ever in any of these camp fucking videos?
He could be. I mean, who knows? Like, it's good to have rappers when you're fucking intense because you need to, pop that on there. Maybe you might not get crustaceans, but as for having the rapper, I mean,
It's a very good question. I think it deserves.
Thank you.
Actually, you have a question from the audience. Tim Day would like to know what, in your expert opinion, would have been the likely outcome if you had started a rumor that the lion had crabs?
Oh, well, you see, this is when the crab mascot just pisses you off enough that you want it to lose. And get another one, then you say that he went to the lion from the other team that you've already disgraced, and now that lion has crabs, and you get something else.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Okay. Wait, Dylan, did you get that?
Yeah, I think I follow. Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know if you had a follow-up question. Now, I do have one more question before I move on to our next presentation. Yes. I was curious how exactly you made out like a bandit. It seemed like that was the start of this. If you could wrap that up for us.
I was just explaining how I made out like a bandit in all of these things. Apparently, I got to watch videos about tent fucking while I grabbed somebody's $20 bill and got somebody's worthless neighbor to go on TikTok, which I believe are all wins. So
that actually makes perfect sense. I really should have thought about that before I asked. Thank you very much, Mr. Dan. That was not only enlightening, but also enlightening. So thank you. Now we're gonna have let's see whose presentation is next. We have Dylan, who's mostly dry, up next. Dylan.
Thank you. Yes. Fortunately, it's very, very not humid right now, so I have dried out somewhat since the start of the show. But right now, I am going to speak on pressuring peers and why it's so friggin' cool. Just like this background, which looks like the carpet of your local bowling alley.
Hell yeah.
Where else is cool? Your local bowling alley. It has carpet like this. Therefore, pressuring peers is like the carpet of your bowling alley. And we're going to see how, maybe, over the course of the next few slides. Let's go to the next slide, please. Now, we have a few upcoming pressures coming up, hence the title of this presentation and the slide here. Okay. Now, of course, first, the intro slide. You've already seen it. It was the last one. This slide, you're literally looking at it, probably. The next slide, dope AF, fam. 4, some graph, you need to wait a minute. We're going to get this next slide, which is dope AF, fam. 5th slide, which is a joke. Here's a preview. We'll see how that comes in later when we reintegrate it. It's called dramatic tension. You know something's coming, but you don't know what. And then slide 6, aka the PowerPoint drift, similar to the Fast and Furious moves. But until then, let's go in sequence to the next slide, which is dope AF. This is peers versus pressures. I took the time to put together this little ring chart here for a second. I'm going to go through and talk about what's on it briefly. Now, 41% of this ring is lies. Believe it or not, it's not true, or I'm just misleading you. 31% of it is peers, which is another word for dummies. Does that make me a dummy? By definition, kind of.
Oh, yeah.
Because peers are on the same level as you. And if I call my peers dummies, I am intrinsically calling myself a dummy as well. Now, that fits into the 11% of this ring, which are facts. Most lies are made up of facts because you disguise lies as facts, or vice versa. Am I telling the truth here? I don't know. 41% of it, maybe. And then the remaining 21% is pressure. Only you know what people actually want to know. Because everybody is a dummy. Your peers, dummies. Makes you a dummy. 41% of this presentation is going to be like just straight lies. I'm lying through my teeth. Is this next statement a lie? Graph was made for you by my pressure bot AI. 41% of it could be. Let's go to the next slide, please. All right. I might have buried the lead a bit earlier, but here is that dope AF graph I spoke on earlier, fam. You can see the y-axis is stress and the x-axis is strain. Now, these are two components of what makes good peer pressure. You stress someone out, the strain on their system makes them more likely to follow what you're saying. And along this chart, you can see the run and the rise, which indicates a pretty dramatic increase in that. It hits the yield strength. Now, that's the yield of how many lies you can tell at once. Eventually, that's going to kind of like dip, and then you just got to power through it, and it's going to go back up in that arc. You're going to hit that ultimate strength, and you'll see that strain is hardening, and it's hitting that neck, like a bottleneck. There it is. There it is. Now I'm getting my camera head on. You're going to hit that ultimate strength. It's ideal to stop here. You're going to have the most number of your dummy peers acknowledge that you're right, listen to your podcast, whatever the hell you want them to do, jump off a cliff, do drugs, have sex in a tent with a lion? I don't know. Whatever. But if you keep going, you're going to hit that bottleneck, and that's graph that those stress and that strain is going to fracture, and people are going to stop listening to you because they're going to be like, listen, 41% of what this guy says is fake. I'm only going to spend 59% of the time listening to him. Let's spend the rest of that 59% going to the next slide, please. All right. Now, here's a joke that I was talking about by yours truly. Now, I did take this joke and the illustration are paired from an 18th century manuscript that was illustrated by a Tibetan monk about the dangers of looking at people through a straw, and if that straw particularly has liquid in it. The joke is, let me see if I can enlarge the screen. Unfortunately, I don't have this memorized. I say, fellow, what have you got? Blisters, sir. Let me have a pound. Vodent M. By the pound. Vicella M. By measure. By measure. Oh, then I'll take a yard. It doesn't quite translate. I mean, Tibetan monk, 1800s, language barriers, time. 41% of what I'm saying is just outright falsehood. This is a situation where, I got some laughs out of there. Perfect. I convinced you, thanks to the peer pressure, because we're all dummies on this panel, that was a funny joke. Let's go to the next slide. Yeah. As I said earlier, literally 15 seconds ago, even I can peer pressure people. Attempt to peer pressure someone smoking Camels. Someone here's probably smoked a Camel, right? I can't get you to do it on like at this conference. We're in a no smoking zone right now. But hey, cigarettes. Doesn't that make you smoke it and you feel good? I don't know. Go smoke a Camel after this show. Go hang out in back with the rest of the restaurant crew. They're all smoking. They're all on their 10s. I'll get to the second one in just a second. But I mean, really, when we're talking about peer pressure, I mean, we are our own peers.
Hmm.
And when it comes to ourselves, we're all dummies, right? I know I'm a dummy. I came onto the show after just taking a shower. No, I don't know what's going on. I'm never going to be able to replicate this, but I do kind of like it, which is a real shame. And I mean, when it comes to improv, solo skits, what else am I doing right now? I did write this presentation beforehand, but I didn't write a script for this. This is all improv, and I'm doing it solo. So yeah, if you want to see more solo skits, you, am I pointing?
Me?
Anyone watching through the camera.
Oh.
Whatever platform you're on, if you're watching this live on Facebook, in Instagram, no, we're not on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitch, Twitter, any of those, like and subscribe. I can see it when you like this video. A little notification pops up. I want to see notifications pop up in the 10 seconds after this airs on your screen because there's like a delay. I want to see likes pop up. Do it. I want to see those viewer counts stay even or go higher. Do it. And then subscribe to this on our YouTube channel, Some Nobodies, and you can watch more of these and you can like those videos. Do it. Yeah, you. Yes, Tim Day. This guy. I don't know you personally. Like and subscribe this video. I tried. Let's go to the next slide. Now, these are top topics to pressure peers with. Number one is Taco Bell. It has a secret Italian menu, actually, if you didn't know that. I wouldn't recommend it because so few people know about it that the ingredients they have on hand to make the stuff get really old. And then when someone orders it, they're like, ah, shit. We have to break out the pepperoni, but it's in the back of the walk-in. Nah, not worth it. But they love it when you order it, so you should go try that. Ask for an Italian pizza instead of the Mexican pizza. They'll know exactly what you're talking about. Special K, the best drug, the worst cereal. Don't eat the cereal. Used to eat the cereal in high school with little chocolate chunks in it. Not worth it. I haven't done the drug, but I've been in very close proximity to people who have done it, and they seem to be having a pretty good time. Fiat, the safest, most versatile vehicle, and a joke which somehow has kept cropping up on this show. And cigarettes, because it only causes future cancer. I don't know how cigarettes keep coming up as a joke that I keep making in more than one episode of this, but hey, go smoke them. Let's get to the next slide, please. In conclusion, peer pressure is a lot like it's all like those videos that Mr. Dan likes on xxxtentaction.com, where you got some people in a tent and they all get covered in stuff, just like this slide here. And just like that stuff there, peer pressure will cover you in things you want to do. The pressure of your peers will make you want to do things. Sometimes in a tent, we do not endorse cigarettes. Don't go smoke cigarettes. I don't know why I put that in there. That's the end of my presentation right there, but you should like and subscribe this video. Nobody has liked this video in the time since I ran that slide, so that's kind of a bummer, but we'll see what happens after this airs. All right, some questions. Let's hear from Mr. Dan.
So I was just curious on the timing of the cigarette. Is it before, during, or after you smoke the Camel?
I mean, it's during, because that Camel is going to be so large that it takes a while. So you might as well calm down while you're doing it.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Michael Colby, because I think that's a funny last name.
I was just wondering, if you were talking about Camels, the cigarettes, because the last time you tried to pressure me into smoking a Camel, I ended up getting kicked out of the petting zoo. So is that the same? Is that the same thing? I also ended up looking like that last slide that you showed.
I mean, you really shouldn't be smoking around children, whether it's a Camel or American Spirits or whatever. And I mean, I don't know, man. You left in such a rush that there were so many spider webs in your way. I don't know what to tell you.
We do have a couple questions for the audience.
Let's hear them.
If I may. Tim Day would like to know, I'm currently smoking a cigarette, but I don't know where to acquire a Camel. Can you direct me to the closest zoo or circus?
I don't know where you are, Tim, so I would probably do a pretty bad job of that. But what?
I was going to say that was a perfect answer. I didn't know you were going to.
Oh, no, I mean, I don't know. Cincinnati has a zoo. It's kind of centrally located.
Nice.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend staying in Cincinnati too long. You'll get sick from breathing there.
Yeah, it's not that good.
Tim Day would also like to know that graph was dope AF. I was wondering how and if it could also relate to constipation.
Can we return to the graph actually really quick?
Oh,
I
absolutely.
just need a refresher. There we go. Okay, yeah, we were talking about stress and how it relates to strain. And while this is technically designed for peer pressure, I mean, I hadn't initially thought that this was a multi-purpose graph, but I suppose you could like relate it to that. You know, you got to run, you got to rise the toilet seat. You know, as the toilet seat rises, the pressure increases. Your yield strength, I mean, constipation, is going to dip, and then you hit the ultimate strength. And if you go too hard, you're just going to break something.
Yeah. Yeah, that almost makes sense. But while this graph is up, I do have a question though.
Yeah, sure.
What is the necking situation on this graph?
It's trying to get someone to make out with you.
Oh, but is this before or after you're smoking Camels?
It depends on the taste, and you know, a lot of people I know tend to smoke when they drink, so they might be a little drunk, and you know, you make out when you're drunk or something. So,
yeah,
I think I had originally, when it comes to peer pressure, related it to that bottleneck where people stop eventually. Yeah, just like turtle heading. Eventually, you reach a point where people stop listening.
Oh, I'm listening to turtle heading. Can we get back into that for a second?
Into turtle heading? I think I've spoken enough.
No, I completely agree. Dylan, who's mostly dry, thank you very much for our presentation.
Of course.
It was also enlightening, which is cool. Now, we do have one more ado, but before we get into it, Mr. Michael, who would like everyone else to do the work and give him a funny name, he has a presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Zach. Now, what is peer pressure? I don't fucking know. We're going to find out together with this presentation that I wrote and made with my own two hands. Also, sometimes my feet, because that's just how I do. So let's learn together. We'll learn what peer pressure is. We might also learn something about ourselves. If I could get the initial first slide, which is also the next slide, please. Now, this is showing us how peer pressure enters our system. As you can see, the beams of pressure are coming from the outside. And once they get into your head, no matter whether it's through your eyes or it's through your ears, sometimes the nose, sometimes peer pressure does enter your butt. That was not part of this slide, but any way it gets into you, it swirls around in your head. It makes you do things. It makes you think things that maybe you might not agree with even. Peer pressure sometimes is so strong that it can make you think and do things that you think are wrong and bad. We will get into that a little bit more later. If I get to the next slide, please. Now, as you can tell, I did a lot. I did so much work on this graph. Now, the sources of peer pressure, they come from all over the world. As you can see, in the middle is a map of the world. All of the countries, all of the continents are represented in this middle part. Now, we have some offshoots. We have the Danish subgroup. We have the Polish subgroup, the Russian subgroup. We have the Middle Eastern subgroup, and we have the other subgroups of other countries that exist in the world. Now, I don't have enough time to go over all of this because really all it's showing is that the different types of peer pressure come from different places. We have the Polish type of peer pressure and the Russian type of peer pressure, and sometimes they overlap into the Latvian subgroup of peer pressure. we have several different types of Danish peer pressure that somehow escaped being part of the world peer pressure. But even that is different from itself. Now, I'm not going to, again, I don't have enough time to go over all of this. Let's just say that this blue, the American, the North American, South American peer pressure is, of course, the strongest. Everyone wants to do what the Americans want them to do, because everyone knows that America is the best and strongest. Next slide, please. Now, how to resist peer pressure? You can't. The closest thing you're going to be able to do to get away from peer pressure is to actually destroy your own eardrum. It stops about 3/4 of the peer pressure from coming in. As everyone knows, 73% of peer pressure comes in through the ears. 21% comes in through the eyes, and then the rest does come in through the butt. But if you get rid of your own eardrums, you can't hear the peer pressure coming in. And then it just, instead of circling around your brain, it just sort of rattles around in there and then just falls out. It's really the best way you can do it, but next slide, please. Now, we have some advanced solutions against peer pressure. These may look to you like IKEA furniture, but I assure you that's not what they are. These actually are computer chips. Once you destroy your eardrums, you don't let the peer pressure come in through the ears anymore. What you need to do is get one of these computer chips implanted into your brain. And what the computer chips do is it takes the visible peer pressure that can still come in, and it traps it. It's like a Ghostbusters ghost trap, but for visual peer pressure. It opens up, it sucks in the visual peer pressure, and it traps it there. Then you do have to go to the doctor, get it removed, and get a new chip implanted. It does go directly inside of your skull. It's not an easy operation. It's not fast, but if you really want to stay safe from peer pressure, you've already destroyed your eardrums. You're going to get this chip put in, and the rest of the peer pressure we will acknowledge in a later slide. Can I get to the next slide, please? Now, this science is peer reviewed. What that means is we have gone to several different ocean towns with carnivals on the pier. And as everyone knows, science comes from the ocean. Everything comes from the ocean. And everyone knows that the best science is done near the ocean. So anytime you go to a pier, you're going to find a scientist, and you'll be able to get your research verified by scientists. 5 out of 5 scientists say that our brain chip is good science. Also, once you're deaf, you don't have to listen to anybody else's podcasts. You don't have to listen to any podcasts at all, which is a great thing, because most podcasts, as you know, are fucking terrible. So we'll get the research done. The science station on this particular pier is the most sciencey looking one. That's why we picked this one. But just go to any old pier at any old ocean, and you'll be able to find some scientists. Next slide, please. Now, should you submit to peer pressure? We've already taken care of the ocular peer pressure with the chips, and we've already gotten rid of the earular peer pressure by destroying our ear bones. Now, the only good kind of peer pressure that there is the kind that comes in through your butt. And as you can see from this slide, this is actually the best position to receive peer pressure inside of your butt. So we don't look. Some smart aleck keeps putting up the name rear pressure, which we have stopped using about 8 years ago. We need to stop using the pun name rear pressure. It's no longer funny. We thought it was funny when we came up with it, but now it's just it's in so many scientific journals. People think it's funny. They're using it to it's not funny anymore. So if you could please, the producers, just stop letting whatever joker is putting this comment up, just please stop. Now, after a while, you're not going to need the bar anymore to get into the position to receive your anal peer pressure. But to begin with, you probably want to use the bar because it's going to help you bend that spine down where it needs to be. Well, you can see how this works. So I'm going to ask you to go to the next slide, please. I'm getting a little bit. Now, in conclusion, you're going to be able to see the way that whoever is giving you the peer pressure into your butt, this is the way they do it. They put the pressure, they smear the pressure on the palm, get it on the fingers, and then they insert the entire, just like this, just like that. That's the noise that it makes if the pressure is being administered properly, and it will turn your butt into a glove, and then the pressure will be in there, the peer pressure, and also the fisting pressure, which, believe me, not a bad thing. So I think we all learned something, including myself, about peer pressure, how to not be influenced by the wrong kinds of peer pressure, and only to be influenced by the right kind of peer pressure. Thank you very much. Now I will take any and all questions. As a matter of fact, Mr. Dan looks very enthusiastic to have his question answered. Mr. Dan, you are...
I am muted, and now I am not. There we are. So, of the patients that have gone through the let's say deafening therapy, does that make the quality of the podcast that they listen to better or worse? And if it makes it worse, have there been any studies on like an anal suppository for the podcast as well as the rear pressure?
Well, as I said, most podcasts are not worth listening to. So by not being able to hear the podcasts, you are in fact making them better. That goes 100% of the time. There's only one good podcast. We'll be getting to that a little bit later as well. But for the most part, the rest of them, We do have a butt plug with a subwoofer in it that only plays Jack Billings Presents Haunted Apartment Complex. It goes into your anus, and then you can feel the podcast throughout your entire body. And it's really the only one you need to listen to. And otherwise, no podcast can get through. So it's really the best of all worlds.
I see. Thank you.
Dylan.
First off, thank you for the presentation. I was wondering if you could speak on the influence that XXX Tent Action had on the development of anal peer pressure theory.
Well, you have to go to...
I don't think we use that phrase anymore.
Oh, sorry.
You have to go to the anal fisting tab of XXX Tent Action. It's the third tab in. I don't know why Step Family is second, but it seems to be popular with people. But if you go to it's the largest section. It's the one with the most amount of videos in it. It'll show you the correct way to apply peer pressure to where you need to apply that to.
Okay.
Loki, Zach.
Secondly, thank you very much for the presentation. I found it enlightening. Firstly, do you need different kinds of chips depending on which form of pressure comes to you? Is there a butt chip for the anal pressure, or is there the one that goes in your head for everything?
You obviously weren't paying attention to the thing.
I'd muted myself.
This is just for the peer pressure that comes in through your eyes. You've already stopped the ear pressure by shattering your eardrum. Just what you want to do in order to, I don't think I explained this properly, but what you need to do to shatter your eardrums is you want to take two big speakers and you want to put them right up to your ears, and then you want to play Silicon Angels just as loud as you possibly can, and that plays the perfect frequency to shatter those eardrums, and you'll never hear anything again. And then the ocular peer pressure chip is what this is here. It goes the peer pressure comes in through your eyes, it gets trapped in the chip, and then you have to get rid of the chip and get a new one put in. They do take a significant portion of your skull each time this happens. So after the third or fourth time, you're going to want to avoid ocular peer pressure as much as you possibly can.
Perfect. Thank you. And I'm sorry for not paying attention to half of that.
You're not. Dylan, do you have a question?
Yes, I just have one more.
Yes.
You briefly spoke at the end of your presentation about the use of an anal subwoofer. I was wondering if you could speak on the usage of an anal dom woofer as well.
Well, the subwoofer is provided to you by the dom woofer. They are a furry. They wear the head. The only bad part about it is those gloves that they wear are abrasive and also much bigger than a normal human hand. So that first time that you get the anal subwoofer put in, it is unpleasant. But after that, it's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect. We do have a couple questions from the audience. Mr. Tim Day would like to know, can you elaborate more on peer pressure, or on how peer pressure enters the rectum? And is there a tried and true scientific method for blocking this point of entry? Well,
if you're wearing your Jack Billings Presents Haunted Apartment Complex butt plug, the peer pressure is not going to be able to be inserted. But in case Mr. Tim Day missed my example earlier, it goes in much like this.
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay.
Just like that.
Yeah. Now, if we can have the producers bring up the subgroup slide real fast with all the groups? Yeah, perfect. Mr. Tim Day would like to know, does the Danish subgroup come in fruit flavors or is it strictly cheese?
Well, it has the fruit flavors with it, but it does all have the cream cheese. Because why would you want it without the cream cheese? The Danishes, the Danishes don't go well for people who are lactose intolerant, but it also makes the applying the peer pressure sometimes easier
Awesome.
if you do have a lot of Danish.
And he would also like to know if you can give us a example of a Latvian peer pressure.
Yes, the Latvian peer pressure involves a lot of the technical term for it is smooshing. It involves very heavy books and a large woman walking on you. It's really it's only for the hardcore. You need to be a master of peer pressure before you work on that Latvian. So, Mr. Tim Day, you can start with something a little bit. You don't want to jump right into the Latvian.
Perfect. Jason Taylor would like to know, can you use smooshing in a sentence, please?
Yes. If you want to smoosh, I'm down, baby.
Okay. Now, Tim Day does have a follow-up question. He said, now, finally, follow-up question. If science comes from the ocean, does that mean the Toadies were singing about science in their hit, quote, I Come From the Water, on their stellar album entitled Rubberneck?
Again, I don't know who these jokers are who keep getting these questions in here, but everyone knows I do not talk about the Toadies. This is a very sore subject for me. The Toadies know what they did, and anyone who knows me and my work also know what the Toadies did to me. I can't. I don't like to get thrown off of my game, but just the mention of the Toadies is making me so angry. I can't even think straight right now.
Jason Taylor would like to know, same question as Tim, but applied to the Nirvana album cover.
All right, I've this is enough about 90s grunge bands. I have other presentations that I have to do tonight.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, Michael, without a funny last name that was enlightening. Now, with that, and wait, sorry. Tim Day would like to say, I'm sorry, I didn't know these were trigger words. Yep. And he honestly probably doesn't. I have no idea. Okay, now listen, with all the presentations given, each member of the panel will indicate with what speaker they believe deserves to win the $50,000 grant awarded from Some Nobodies Patreon account and the Collector's Nostalgia Prize of the Week. Now, I'm going to ask everyone to please rate with a number. I will be number 1. Mr. Dan is number 2. Dylan is number 3. And Michael is number 4. Now, when I get done counting to 3, please show me a fingers. 1, 2, 3.
Everyone wins.
We all have to room together at Some Nobodies University.
Okay, yes, we have to share this knowledge.
With Michael's XXX tent action office in the back.
Oh, God.
And Dylan's camel smoking, which is going to be a brand new habit that I'm excited to take up.
Bullborn's going to love it.
Now,
can we put that on XXS 10 action? I mean,
yeah, well, we're going to have to. Now, that concludes our conference for the week. I'm going to say, Dylan, tell us what our next week's conference is going to be. Pretty please.
The proper way to smoke a camel in a tent.
Please tune in next week, whatever you're watching this on, to hear us talk about how to properly smoke a camel. And obviously, I've been Loki Zach, and my payment for doing this is to make someone give us a new outgoing slogan. So, Mr. Dan, please, our new outgoing slogan.
Oh God. Just go watch some XXXTentacion, everybody.
Yeah.
I
We're
love
done
that.
here.
All right, let's
Listen-
get out of here real
Listen to
fast.
Jack Billings and Silicon Angels and Three Geeks and all of those, and we're gonna go because
Yeah.
Yep, find links everywhere. We love you guys. Thank you. Bye.
Strong. They're raised to be weak because the men where I'm from are weak, but we don't like to think we're weak. So we not weak ourselves by making our women strong, by making our women not strong. And I think that makes perfect sense.
Thank you for watching PowerPoint Showdown. Today's winner will receive a $50,000 grant courtesy of Some Nobodies Patreon. Congratulations on your win! Join us next week for another showdown.
Thanks for providing that big prize, guys.